Hello everybody and welcome to Wappelville. We're just getting this all set up here, starting ourselves a live session, and we got something that's really different right here. This is from District 9. This is a board game. It's on Kickstarter right now, and it's in its final hours. I think we're probably somewhere 25, 26 hours left, something like that. And we've got one of these prawns right here. I believe this is CJ. I got the picture a little bit larger so you can see we've got his little buddy with him right there. Not a lot in the way of colors. We got the reds, the greens, such and such. I'm over here making sure that I've got the chat area set up. And then I'm going to make my window just a little bit bigger here. And we're going to make this picture a little bit smaller. And that's going to reveal a palette camera. I think you guys are pretty used to this, the folks that are already kind of familiar with Wappelville here. This is basically a little chamois sponge inside a Chinese food container. And then basically a little piece of parchment paper over the top of that. Some water, poof, you got yourself a wet palette. I use these little guys right here. See these little China, that actually made out of plastic, I think this version is. Real cheap. You throw them in your palette, and that is good for, well, something like this. Because I'm going to throw some of this in here. So this is some of the contrast paints. You leave the jar open, you tip the jar over, and now you've got $8 of stuff all over your table, and that's kind of a double sad. You put it in there, takes away the sad. Brushes. This is the usual thing too. So we got our number 8 round craft brush. We also have a number 6 in there too. And as you can see, not real expensive. There's a dozen of them here. I usually get them at Hobby Lobby. Hey Gary, how's it going? First last, this is gotta be one of the earliest. I think I did try maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock a couple of months ago. But you know me, it's normally 2:30 in the morning. So let's get ourselves here. Let's shrink that picture down a bit more. There. Now, let's make sure we got our focus going because this is a pretty small little guy right here. But we've got some liner paints, stuff like this from Reaper Miniatures. We got brown liner. There's a red liner, a sepia liner. We have a couple of other things out here too. We've got some Pro Acryls here. This is from Monument, Slow Fuse, Creature Caster. We got some off-whites, something like this. It could be just about anything. The idea is to have it just not be white. This has a little bit of blue in it. No big deal. Pretty simple. We got over here in this little cover, that's just some simple water. And makeup sponges. I know Gary and First Last and Bethany and all the regulars. Oh, hey there, Richard Starship. How's it going? They're familiar with this kind of process. So what we are going to do is take some of that brown liner, some of that sepia liner, maybe even a touch of mahogany, and we are going to just hit the base real quick. But you see we change up that color as we go along. You're also going to see something maybe a little bit different. This is your first time watching. I work on the whole figure all at once. None of this, oh, we'll work on the face and leave everything else just primed. And I'll take the sponge. See if we can wipe away some of that paint. It reveals what's underneath. While we're on the subject of primer, this is what I used. Now I airbrushed this on. You don't have to airbrush this. We used, well, some of these craft brushes to brush this stuff on for years before we ever had an airbrush. So I just love it. I mean, it's basically the best primer that I've run across. Now we're going to also take some of this contrast green right here. And a little bit of the sepia liner too. So you see it's kind of a little bit of a slushy mix right there. We are going to go right into this here and start taking some of the sepia, and you'll see this a lot. We're just going to be changing the color as we go down. Yes, I know the shirt or jacket or whatever it is that he's got is supposed to be red, but we're not really worried about that. We are taking some red though, and we're starting to get it into the mix. Some more of the sepia liner. Back to our little slushy of contrast green. Oh, I think that's warp lightning green. Or warp, nah, it's warp lightning green, not warp stone green. I think that's just a regular paint color. Not so much a contrast color, but see how we're just changing this around. We get a little touch of that mahogany in there. We let it blend in. Real nice and easy with our greens that are already in place. And you say, well, gee, why'd you do all that little bit of primer shading if you're just going to wipe it out? Well, it's not necessarily wiped out because we will magically bring that back. The power of the makeup sponge. It's not just for faces anymore. You can cut these with the scissors, make them a little bit more fine. So let's do that. I think I got myself a scissors somewhere around here. Here, let's just cut up a few of these. So now we've got ourselves a little sharper angle so we can get to the little guy here. We're not completely wiping away the paint, but what it does do, so we've got some green to work with now. It enhances the shading that was already there. And I know, gee whiz, a couple of times, and even on Kathy's afternoon streams, I've had people asking, oh, hey Dave, how's it going? Yeah, this is something a wee bit different for me. I don't even know if I've painted a Tyranid. So, yeah, this should be really different. Here, let's start to put in some of our other stuff. We're taking that maggot white, I believe. Yeah, maggot white. Going to mix it in there. We're just going to start to straight away work in some of our lighter colors. And I think some of you have probably tried the contrast paints. I've gonna have some links and end screens to my own contrast videos. See, it's gonna be used in a little different way here. You know, typical contrast paint, you wouldn't see people removing it like that. See, we're back to the contrast here. We're gonna go a little wet into wet with this. Let's see, gotta get me a makeup sponge. Question is, do I have the stones to ask a lady behind the beauty counter? Well, that's a fun little story there, because normally it's just easier and cheaper to get it on Amazon. Big, huge cases of the stuff. But I was over at a friend's house, and I wanted to show him the whole technique of doing the makeup sponge thing. So you had two guys who really looked like they were either bouncers or homeless people or something like that that walked into a dour store relatively late at night and walked up to the ladies and said, so where's your makeup sponges? And they pretty much proceeded to back away and said, take anything you want, just leave us alone. So yeah, that can go sideways. I want to get myself some darks right in here. We'll go back in with lights later, but for now, we're going to do that. We're going to take some of this green again. We're going to go over the antennas here, or antennae. I just going to say antennas for right now. Remember, we got the red here in his jacket. Let's play with that. There's that mahogany, and you can see how it's starting to blend in with some of the other stuff that's already there. It's, I guess you could say it's a watercolor style. I don't really like to equate it in that way because people, they get a little different image in their mind when you say watercolors than I do, because surprise, surprise, my own watercolor style was super different than what you would normally expect. And again, we don't mind the things blend together here. The whole point, and you will hear this refrain more than once. If a color goes somewhere, it must go everywhere. So now we're back to that little mix of the contrast paints. Going right back in here. It lets me get a little bit of, sort of a camo green, yellow sort of thing going on. And you can see now in a couple of minutes at most, we've established what it is that we want to see, I think, throughout the entire figure. Then from there, we can start to add things that are lighter. Yeah, retro, that's why, well, now there's a downside to getting things on Amazon. And I found that out as anytime I go on to Facebook, because I get so many products, whether they're display things or shelving units or whatever. I am I used to be the Prince of Maybelline, now I am the King of Maybelline, because recommended for James, pretty much the top 10 things are all makeup products. So be prepared. That's all I can say, is be prepared that when you start getting these things, well, you probably won't be getting them as often as I am. Now here, so I got a couple of different greens. So we got this warmer stuff down here, but then we've got this is a little more high saturation right here. Basically just a green contrast paint with some of the off-white. And the whole idea here is to keep this line moving. We don't necessarily want it all to be yellowish green. And yes, we are using a big old craft brush that costs, depending on sales tax, 25 cents, depending on where you live, more or less. The Hobby Lobby ones that I showed you, those usually in the neighborhood of 35 cents or so when I get them at the store. Maybe a little less online. Yeah, here, let's grab some more of that. I haven't used the Iandin contrast paint in a while, so this is fun. You see how that makes this kind of semi-opaque mix here? Let's get a little more of that in there. Now it looks really opaque on here, but it is not. What's underneath here is actually still gonna show through, and that's something that we want. Now those are actually blue. I did take a look at the picture. I actually really made that as big as I could on screen and moved it around. Now I'll make sure that my chat stays with me here. So sometimes I just gotta move the windows around, so I apologize for that. Yeah, see, look at that. There's a ton of paint on this brush. That's the other advantage of working with the big old brushes like this. They will hold their fair share of paint, to say the least. Or maybe a lot more than their fair share. What that means is there's a lot less of this back and forth to the palette, to the miniature. You'd be surprised just how much less time you spend painting a miniature. Oh, Dave says the embarrassing thing from Amazon is the way to go. Yeah, put a big jar of Vaseline for the texture rollers. Now, I think you know that for me, the extra firm gray Sculpey, that is my way to go on the rollers. I absolutely love that because it never ever sticks. I'll grab you a little quick sheet here of texture. So there you go. That's the extra firm gray Sculpey. Obviously, your Egyptian roller. Nice flat sheet that I can break. And real quick here, let me show you some bases. So this is the Necron roller right here. Yeah, it's really fun. Again, the extra firm gray Sculpey lets you carve it, bake it. Now, I could have done Something like, for these guys here, if there was something other than the blasted landscapes theme, I could have done that for these guys too. All I would have had to do was just put some pins in their feet, would have been more than enough to attach them to the base. So here's some of that lighter, a little bit lighter color getting in there. And you think that's light, well, I mean, there's light. And that is not white either. So let's lighten up our yellow, put a touch of green in there. And you can see we're on some of on the carapace, going to start to find some lighter tones in there. Yeah, and even this big old brush, what are we painting? We're painting little eyes with it. I do have smaller brushes. You'll see those eventually. But my task is normally to paint not dozens or several dozens, but hundreds of miniatures at the same time for all manner of armies, Lord of the Rings, 40K, fantasy, Song, Ice and Fire, you name it. Bolt action, yeah, I got 17 bolt action armies underway. Cruel Seas. I said if it's a miniature, I'm probably painting it. Not sure how you do those awesome bases. Actually, go if you subscribe to the channel, you'll be able to. It'll probably be easier to do a search for all of the basing tutorials that I've got. Now the Necron basing tutorial and the figures, that's part of a Patreon series that I'm doing, because I think it's going to be flashing across it's on the top of the screen too, but on my Patreon page I think I am now on series, I'm just about to start series 14, and each series has 5 episodes, and it covers the start of the project, that's basing. So like here, if we were going to be doing the entire box of all the prawns and everything, it would start out with getting all the prawns prepped, say that 10 times fast, and then we'd do some kind of basing. And I would probably want to do something more elaborate than just the rocks here. Speaking of which, I'm going to grab me some of this red here, mixed with the green, and we're going to get some color on these rocks, because it's about time to do that. And the second episode is something like this, because this is basically a color test for the prawns, because we got more. We got this one here, and we also have this one here. So basically right now, this is feeling my way through the colors here. Hadn't really seen these before. I prepped them up a little while ago and was just looking for the window to do one of these sessions here. The brush right here, this is just basically a craft brush. It's a number 6 round. This is the one you're going to see way more often, and everybody recognizes it by the green handles here. Now the nice thing is that when those brushes get a little bit more worn down, they start to become something more like this, like a filbert brush. But look at that! Look at the tip on that. But just swinging around like this, you wouldn't believe how handy a shape like that is. Vehicles, you name it, ships, busts, and also too, you're seeing that I'm starting to put some of this red not just on the base, but finding some places on the figure too. Because I know this guy, basically these shorts, which I'm just going to call jorts because they look like jean shorts, those will be blue. We'll hit those in a little bit. You can see this lets me work on all kinds of things at once. Look at it here. I'm doing this sideways stroke like so. It's not a dry brush. There's a ton of paint in this brush right now. I'll show you. Look at that. Not a dry brush. But because you got the length of these bristles, This is the best way to show you, and boy, I just don't use these very often at all. So that right there, you got that spotter brush. And the tips of these, are they really all that different? Well, look what I got right here. This is very, it's just, there's no give to that. This has plenty of give, holds plenty of paint. So it just gives me an advantage on many different levels. Now, for some folks, you know, if you're used to the small brushes, it may take a little while to adapt to these larger ones. But when people give these things a shot, they generally say, wow. I know a longtime supporter, Mike, he's the person behind a whole bunch of different basing techniques in the form of tree bark. That's probably what I would use on these little guys here to give them something more than just rocks and gravel on the base. Probably would go with tree bark. But I believe his last figure that he painted was all pretty much painted entirely with one of these brushes. And you'll see me doing, you know, something pretty similar to that. Something pretty similar. And you can see here, as we start to work our way lighter and lighter, we start to find all these lots of little shapes embedded in this carapace and oh gosh, the exoskeleton, I guess, is about the only. See, but we still have some of those original glazes. They are still in place. They're still there, doing their job. And now you see why maybe we let some of that red stay in place. Red and green, yes, they are complements. They're opposing colors. But when you mix them together, now you're getting a brown. And that is not the worst shadow color to have. You will notice the lack of black. There's another phraseworthy thing. There is no black on the palette, and there won't be. There never is. Remember those blue and brown liners that I talked about at the beginning? That right there, you get those two together, you got yourself black. There is just no need to be using that black. Because once you go there, you just have a dead dark color. There's nothing going on. There's no life to that. And when people, I know just the other day, someone was saying to me, oh, Gary says he switched about 2 months ago, loved the brushes, need to get some liner brushes. Oh yeah, liner brush wise, we just got a whole bunch of the Winsor Newton Cotmans. Now they're not the Series 7. I'll show you some in a second here. Dick Blick, yeah, they just had I don't know if they've got a big sale going on. All I know is we got a bunch of them, and I may try to get me some more. So they've got this pretty distinctive blue handle right here. And we got some more of these. See this 111 round? We got a few different sizes of that. So you'll be seeing, when you see a blue handle brush on one of these here live sessions, you'll know where it came from. Now, miniatures like this that have, for lack of a better term, a rough texture to them. It's not rough in that it lacks detail. It's rough in that there's a lot of little surfaces and edges. When you do this sort of glazing style approach, you really enjoy the benefit of that on these guys here. Now, this is pretty much the same technique I used on that Necron. Of course, the Necron had all the usual metals. Now let's do something a little different here. So I just took some of that faded ultramarine blue, mixed it with my yellowish green. The whole idea is to keep this from, you don't want this to get boring. Now what I'm going to do, this is something I really like to do. Once I get some red in here, I'm going to do my little trick of killing all the saturation, which means taking all the color out of this, and then it's just black and white. And then you can sort of see the difference. So we're going to go into this red here. Let's start to lighten this up a touch. You can see that's pretty transparent. Let's see if I missed any going off small brushes, maybe for eyes. Raphael, you know what? That's one brush I've never tried. The other one is, what's it called? Rosemary. Yeah, I haven't tried those. It's not because I didn't want to. It's I just sort of keep forgetting. Now, there's another thing too. I have Winsor Newton Series 7 brushes. Believe it or not, I have them. But they last a whole lot longer. You see, if I'm doing, I don't know, 70, 80, who knows, 90% of all the grunt work with one of these brushes, and then just like Dave was saying, save your good brush for the small areas. Well, now you got something. It's going to last a whole bunch longer. So let's take a little bit of that's the contrast yellow, and this is going to make the red a little more towards the orange side here. Yep. Wow. Completely changed the temperature of that. I know not everybody's familiar with that sort of an expression. Color temperature, it's, let's say you've got a green. Let's say you have something that's a sort of a teal green, almost like a jade type color. You would consider that more of a cooler green. And then let's say you got something like a camo green. Well, there's more yellow in it, so i.e., therefore, warmer. You can see I'm actually taking some of the color that I used for the base. We're starting to incorporate that here into the shirt or jacket or whatever item of clothing he's sort of wearing at the moment. Now, it's a little bit weird to be painting just one figure here. Normally, like I said, for the Patreon videos and stuff, it is a whole passel of miniatures. Okay. I'm going to do my little thing here. Haven't tried the Series 33. Let's see, I bought some rosemary in the UK. I think it was the series pointed Kolinsky version. Yeah, Trevor, this is really... it's weird. Normally I do this, like I said, about between 1 and 2 a.m. Central Time. So let's do this. Away goes the color. But you can still see the shading is there. That tells you, again, the difference with color temperature, saturations. As we bring that back, now all of a sudden we got our reds back, we got the differences in our greens and everything else. So yeah, well, basically I'm doing this early at this time because during the normal streaming time of late at night, I am going to be doing some more filming. Actually going to start the next army painting series, which is the Warriors of Harad. That's for Lord of the Rings. I believe I've got, let's see, Easterlings. I've got Army of the Dead. I've got Morgul Knights and Rohan Infantry. So I already have 4 army painting series just on Lord of the Rings. I believe I have that many on Song of Ice and Fire. Let's get some blue in here. This is a blue liner. We'll get his shorts down here. And like I said, the series, what is that, 13 is Necrons. Those are kind of torn. Then we've got a whole bunch of Warcry stuff. Both Kathy and myself. And she streams. Getting a little bit of this brown liner in here. Usually 3 p.m. Central. That's usually the daylight. That's her domain. The night is my domain. I am the vampire painter, whatever you want to call it. And she's the daytime person. And she's painting her war cry right now. The starter set stuff. I've got a whole bunch of that prepped. I'm going to do some basing tutorials on that. I've also got, what is that, Cipher Lords. So I'm going to do an army painting series on them. And then there's this, I don't know, this thing with these nuns with guns. What is it they call it? Sisters of Battle. Who's ever heard of them? Yeah. So when those are out, I'm going to be getting me some of them. And I'll be, well, most likely doing several army painting series. Because, well, between Seraphim, regular sisters, Retributors, and Repentia, that right there is enough for 4 army painting series. I'm getting these a little bit darker here. Here, let's get a little darks into his face there. Let's get a little more greenish shading down here. Again, we're going to take some of our green contrast paint, utilize that. Get a little bit of difference here with our rocks. Every so often, if I missed your question in the chat here, Van Hammer 73, the Scepter Gold Windsor Newton. I'll have to. Have I tried one of those? The Scepter name. That sounds familiar. Who knows? Maybe I have at some point. Now, there's just, well, obviously there's a lot of options out there for brushes. But the go-tos for me will always going to be the craft brushes. Because you can see they are rugged. And by the way, you can just clean these with rubbing alcohol. I've gotten super glue into these things, done some rubbing alcohol, and oh, boom, now I'm just painting with them again. So I'm going to throw just a little bit of yellow out here. Now this is that Creature Caster Monument paint. Really covers pretty intensely. So I'm looking to just get some eyes on this little guy here. They probably won't end up that light. I can always just glaze those down. But I need to see them for right now. It's almost like they're just being marked. Here, let's go back to some of that green once again. And it seemed to me, according to that little bit of art that I'm working from, that green was the overarching color theme on these. It's not everything. There's some browns in there. I'm sure on screen there's purples and all kinds of really nifty stuff in there. For Bad Moons, Vallejo White Surface Primer, Flash Gets Base. Oh, the Cassandra Yellow. Yeah, I know Kathy really likes that. I know I've used that. Used that one several times. That's a really fun one to use. Nice and intense. Really does some nice work. Let's see. I don't know if I've tried the. Well, I haven't really tried too many Reaper brushes at all. Actually, I didn't even know they made brushes until this last ReaperCon when we're in the factory, and I said, "There's brushes," and they say Reaper. And they said, "Of course, did you not know this?" And I said, "Nope, did not know this." So I'm just gonna keep working in some of my greens here. Back and forth. And like I said, we can go smaller. I've got myself, believe this is the Winsor Newton here. Yeah, I'll just grab him. We're just using him last night on this. So it was pretty much the same thing. So just technically earlier today, this was my last tutorial, and basing wise, this was the big hit right here, is using this vellum foliage. That is not paper foliage. See how that nice and springy, doesn't break or snap. That's from Wicked Elf, and I'm going to be using a lot more of that. You can be sure. Oh yeah, I absolutely loved those things. Now we're working in some of that grayish blue kind of jean shorts texture here. You saw how we set the stage early on. We did the removing of paint, all that other kind of stuff, and now we can play off of that. It's a little more of that faded ultramarine there. So in these few areas where you have color, then you start to play with it. We can throw out some more red also. Here, let's get just a little touch of this blue onto this guy here. It's not even going to be noticeable. You will not even see it. I know that people are like, oh my gosh, you're using almost like a purple color on the green. What's going on? You see that and you notice it because you're seeing it being painted. But once you see the overall thing as a whole, it's all just a part of the whole now. You don't see that anymore. Here, I don't want to get that too bright too fast. That is always something you have to factor in when you've got the Monument / Slow Fuse paints. Is that, man, those guys, they cover like you would not believe. It's handy. You just have to be aware of it. Let's see, I thought prawns had blue blood. I've never seen the movie at all, so much like Song of Ice and Fire, I'm at a wee bit of a disadvantage. Because, yes, I'd never read the books or seen the show, and then had to paint, hundreds, and I mean hundreds. That's not a joke or whatever. I've already painted at least a couple hundred of those. Yeah, just kind of blind. I had basically research it like it was bolt action stuff. Like Winter War 1939 Finns. North of the wall. Very north of the wall. So here, look at this. We got that ultramarine, faded ultramarine blue, a little yellow. Oh, look, we're making green. Because who would have thought yellow and blue makes green? I did. And a lot of you did too. But I've seen so many people, they're hunting around for just the right green, when the right green is probably already sitting there on their palette. They could have just taken a little of this, a little of that, mix it together, poof, you got what you need. So we're gonna now let's look at this. See, as we start to bring out a few of those edges, let's do some more. And this looks really light compared to everything else. Yeah, if you were to look at this on the palette, it's barely, it's a light middle tone by comparison. Why? Because we established all those darks early on. Really got those settled in. Because yeah, look at that. Here, let's just put a white next to it. And I know there's some reflection here. There's white next to it. So we'll throw a little bit of this out there just for effect. Oh, there's a good spot. Yeah. Look at the difference of that to that. Completely different. And I always avoid using white because people always say, "Man, my stuff gets chalky." I don't understand why. Well, what'd you use for lighting that? Well, I used white, and that's generally the reason why. If you do something along the lines of, let's say, some yellow or some orange or red or light blue or light seafoam green, that's going to keep away the chalky and give you a little bit more depth in your highlights. Now, see, if I'm going to use a little bit of that white, I better get some yellow in there to kill the white. And the idea, see, now we can start to have some fun. I try not to use the whole extreme highlighting thing. I'm not quite sure how that became a term. It's almost like I'm not sure when that really came into being, the whole extreme highlighting thing, but it did. It's really, I don't subscribe to so many of these terms and conditions and everything else, these little rules. When I'm doing my painting tutorials, and the folks that watch this on a regular basis, they know this is not about laying down a whole bunch of rules. You better do this. You better do this or else. It's more like, well, if you want to make something a little bit easier, try this. It's about options. Because maybe you can't get a certain particular paint. So let's say you can't get the Pro Acryls, but you can get Reaper paints. I would be using the Reaper Clears. Let's see what we got here. Something like this. Clear red. Let's throw this out there. I'm just gonna pop some of that right over here. I don't need a whole bunch of it, but it's essentially really close to the transparent red of the Pro Acryl. And I mean really close, not just color-wise, but in its purpose. See how it's got a little bit of translucency to it, which is really handy. For lack of a better term, I always called this a dry glaze, because you can see there's no water on the brush. But yet, I'm painting over this, and you can see what's underneath. See it like right there? You can see the dark. You can still see some of that light that's there. But you don't have to, there's no water to control or anything like that. I know people were probably wondering early on, so what's the deal with the mixing the contrast paint with other paints? It lets you do a couple of things. And like I said, I've got plenty of other videos that cover contrast paint and that sort of thing. What it lets me do is now I can use water to thin it down if I need to. But it also, because it's thickened up a little bit with so-called regular paint, now get a little bit less of that pooling, because I'm fairly certain that the number one, complaint that you'll hear about the contrast paints is that you get this really nasty pooling. Well, if you sort of take away some of the liquid element of it, there's a little bit less of the pooling. You notice that we weren't slopping it on. Well, the contrast paint stuff to me is way too expensive to be slopping on anything. Because you saw a little of it that I've been using here, and in not a whole lot of usage, I've sort of run out of almost 4 colors. And now this is a little bit of formula. I blame GD and Golden Demon for the shading stuff. Extreme, yeah. Let's see. For me, my favorite paint, and I get asked this a lot, is oil paints. I love working with oils. It lets me work on more figures at once. I can be more relaxed. I can do wet blending whenever I want. And guess what? They don't take weeks to dry. Sometimes, because you're replacing so much of the oil with white spirits, it'll be dry. Sometimes in a matter of hours. Oh, I've been shocked. Yes, indeed. I think I've done, oh gosh, probably 4 or 5 live sessions with the oils. And I know I've done a whole bunch of videos with the oils. I think I've done 3 of my army painting series with oils. You see, right now we're starting to build up some highlights here on the cloth. It just doesn't have to be painful. And I see people just really, boy, it's like there's a science to making things difficult, or an industry around making things difficult, and I just don't know why. I'm trying to make things easier. I mean, this is supposed to be the fun thing for everyone, including me. Yes, this is what I do for a living, but it is also super fun for me. And it just seems like there's some kind of need to make it really difficult. It's no wonder that there's an awful lot of unpainted armies out there. Now we're adding a little bit of lighter color to that sort of a tan. So all that stuff that was set up in those first moments of chaos, which actually was a very controlled chaos. It just doesn't seem like it. Now all that stuff, you can take advantage of it. So we can put in a little bit of extra texture now. Even here on the ground, can start to pick out a few rocks and you notice I'm not dry brushing the rocks either. Just painting those in regular like. Here, let's get some lights on the little guy's face. Let's find ourselves some lights on the big guy's face. And I'm going into, so this is the white into the, and let's get a little touch of the yellow in there. So that's the contrast green with some of the yellow. That's the Iandan yellow. Let's go a little lighter. What does the contrast paint do? Well, not only does it tint that slightly towards the green, but it also keeps it a little bit on the translucent side. Yeah, so we're getting a little bit of a face now in there. Hey Matthew, how's it going? Yeah, this is, I'm hoping to do more at this time here. It's a whole lot easier to do the late night ones. And I guess if you want to get notifications for these things at any point, and I learned this the hard way myself too, you can subscribe and that's great, but I guess if you click the bell or all notifications, that's it. You got to click all notifications. Because there would be YouTube guys that I would subscribe to, and all of a sudden I would be searching their channel and I'd see all this content. I'd say, well, wait a second. I subscribed. How come I never got the notice? And I believe it's because I didn't click the all notifications. So I think a notification might just say, oh, well, so-and-so posted a video. I think all notifications goes, hey, wake up, this person is doing something live. I could be wrong. I don't necessarily know all the inner workings of YouTube. It kind of changes too all the time. Now, I don't want to lose all of those original darks. Hey, Bethany, holy smokes. Well, let me see. What would this be in? I'm guessing that is 11:49 in the morning, so yeah, lunch. Geez, so this is actually not the worst time for you. I thought I was gonna, poor Bethany, she's not gonna be able to check this out at the usual time. Because, hey, somebody has to be representing Tim Tams, Cricket, and the beloved Aussie rules, despite the fact that the Western Bulldogs will not be part of the finals. Now let's go in for something like this. So we're taking, you can see the difference here as we throw a little more. That's more of your traditional sort of, I don't know, Kelly green or whatever. We have an awful lot of warm greens in here, lots of browns. This is not just lighter, but it's a whole different color of green. Whole different color. It's got essentially more blue in it than all the other greens that have been used so far. Now this is something that it's almost like weathering and chipping. This can go too much too in a hurry. It does not take much to go, oh yeah, well that was a little more than I needed. So we have to, now we can always, let's say we don't like it. Now you just go back in, do a little glaze over it, something like that. So it's not earth-shattering. It's not the end of the world. But what it does definitely gives us a little more. Yeah, look at that. So I'm going to try some right here. Hopefully you can see it's right in there. So on this side, this is where we've got more of a yellow. We actually got almost a purple in there. Now we've got almost a seafoam green over here. We're doing that on some of these almost type of scales here. Let's get some of this on this side right here as these plates go down the side of the neck. Yeah. Another reason to do this is because it's a nice little contrast to the reds. Figure's pretty small, and there's a lot of little things going on. Sometimes to create that little extra bit of visual excitement, sometimes you have to go a little rogue and add something like this. And when the eye looks at it, they're not just going to see this, well, especially from any kind of a distance, to go, ah, look at that, there's seafoam green on there, I see it. No, just going to register as a whole bunch of different colors of green. Who do you like for the grand final? Well, I just didn't think that Brisbane was going to be doing that. I know this was the miracle season for them. After a whole bunch of years, I mean, that was Brisbane doing what they did would be a little bit like Carlton all of a sudden next year being out there at the MCG on a September day or, well, October day. Which is weird because way back in 2008, when I first started watching Aussie Rules, Carlton was, I don't know if they were definitely a finals team. I don't know if they were, it was mostly, well, obviously Pies, Cats, and Swans on the outside. This was pre-Hawthorn. Richmond sneaking in, yeah. You can never keep a revolt down forever. Now, Kathy, my wife, she's saying killed a fan, so she has the older, taller revolt. Yeah, GW, that was probably the last team I would have thought that would get to finals. Richmond is sneaky. Now, they didn't really sneak up on anybody last year. See how we just added those lights there now? Pick that out. There's some more. Just going to find ourselves a few of these brighter highlights. Now, let's say you wanted to somehow simulate, well, that sort of glossy texture. You could take any kind of water effects or, well, art coat, GW art coat, something like that. Maybe even mix it with a little bit of paint and kind of glaze that over. So let's see what we're trying to get, a few little lights here on the ends of these plates. So what time? What are we looking at? 8:55. So basically, in an hour, we have been able to really get ourselves a lot of shading, a lot of different shapes here. I can work this the other way too. We've been adding a bunch of lights. Well, we could go the other way with this too. And we could do some glazing to make things darker. So always keep that in mind. Just grabbing myself now something warmer. Here. Just a few little extra lights. On little guy here, his little buddy. I'm gonna maybe throw some lights on his antenna. Now in here, I'm gonna make the picture a little bigger here, so bear with me on that. Yeah, let's get that pose to be, well, a couple different poses. So yeah, if I wanted to go real shiny on this, I could just take, again, some kind of water effects or whatever, mix that in with the paint. Oh, thanks, William. Much appreciated. Hey, Joe. Hey, Joe, were you at the at Caleb's thing, that CK's thing that they just did? I saw the pictures of that the other day on Facebook. Okay, we're gonna really go wild here. So we are mixing, that's that red over there, we're mixing it with basically our green highlight color. And we're gonna go into the face here. See if I can't pick out a few things on the face. So I'm gonna just get my focus adjusted there. Now I need to get my chat screen. Okay. Yeah, we didn't know anything about it until all of a sudden it was posted in the AdeptCon staff page. I was like, what? Wow, they're here? Yeah, that was a big surprise. Here, let's do some more of that. Now, I think we will be around for the next staff meeting, and it would be fun to maybe bring the camera along, and, well, it's not going to be 25 hours of it like in July, but maybe do some little live painting of some stuff. October, well, it'll be too early for Sisters. I just want to know when my new Tomb Kings are actually coming out. I would imagine sometime in November, early December maybe. So look what we did. We took some of this yellow here with the white, and that's our light green over there. Let's see what we can do highlight wise. Yeah, that was a pretty wild thing. It was just nice that you could be playing games at the same time. So it just, instead of it being such a formal thing like, oh, here's a class, it was like, yeah, just we'll play some games and watch somebody paint, and I guess that kind of makes it just seem a little less like work. Because I know that happens all the time to people that I know. When painting just starts to feel like work, why the heck would you do that when you already have a full-time, or sometimes a few full-time jobs? Now I'm going to take that yellow in there. See what I can do on the top of this, top of the head here. Yeah, they are Asiarchs. I know I'm probably blowing the pronunciation, but I've seen little videos that they played, and it is an entire new miniature line. There's nothing of the old stuff. This is all brand new stuff. And let's see, if anybody's ever seen my blog, go to see the Tomb King section, and you'll see, oh gosh, like 300 posts, maybe 400 posts on them. Yeah, the blog also has tutorials on it. Now they're just step-by-step pictures by comparison to this. That was before I had things like, well, cameras and everything else. So I'm just taking that brown liner here, and now we're going back the other way. We've been working towards the light edge of things for a long time. We're going to go backwards now. Go the other direction. And every so often I may just do a little bit of a glaze here. So I'm going to take some more of the contrast green. We even mix it with a little bit of our brown. And we'll do some darker glazes in places like in here. We'll enhance those shadows. Now see, if I was to just paint things in isolation, like just this red jacket here, clothes, once I started painting this stuff, anything next to green is just going to bounce. It's just going to pop right out of there. But by having that reference in place the entire time, it just made life so much easier. Now the little guy here, let's get him some glazing on his face too. Yeah, for me, I wanna see what they. I've only actually ever seen the pictures on my phone. What I'm hoping is that they don't have that sort of extreme boxiness that a lot of the sculpts have. Now, not all of them, like the Cypher Lords from the Warcry stuff, didn't have that. See what we're doing here? We tone this down. Just taking some of this. It's basically really watered down. Becomes a glaze here. Unifies this a little bit, gets away from some of that brown. There. I might even I'll grab some of this. Touch of that red. Oh, let's even go in here and let's strengthen a few darks on this. Easy peasy. Like I've said a bunch of times already, this doesn't have to be difficult. It can just be fun. Doesn't have to be a whole nother job after a job after a job. So I'm gonna, I like these parts around the eyes not having too much in the way of extra lights around them. I want to go back in here on the little guy's eyes. There's one. There's your other. And then a couple more highlights in places. We've got a hand here that, to me, I want to try and create some more definition by adding some darks in here. So we'll just add some darks around that claw. And you can see it wasn't just a line. We actually did sort of a semi-wash around that. Once again, back to my more of that almost like a Kelly green type of color here. There's almost some modeling in here. That's what I'm looking for. No, unfortunately, so we were at ReaperCon, right? And Chimera, they sent not just the paints, they sent some of their new miniatures, and I mean like new things, brand spanking new. And we had a hold mail that was supposed to be till October 5th. Well, not supposed to be, it was. And for some ungodly reason, they tried to deliver it on the 3rd, when, of course, we were in Texas. And sadly, now that box is on its way back to them. As of, I don't know, the 18th. So at some point, it works its way back here. I tried them. It's basically another form of Reaper Clear / slow fuse transparent paints. It's basically a whole bunch of pigment, but there's no white in there. You don't have any of the titanium white or whatever that just tends to be added to a lot of colors. So this is a little bit lighter blue here. Oh, did you miss the sniper? No. Where is here he is. He's right over here, so you can see the difference extra. What I was going to do was go back in time, and now that we've got this along at a certain progress here, I was going to go do almost a little bit of a review and do some of the starting opening rounds on the sniper. So we'll call that for now. We'll just, actually what I want to do is do some glazes on the base. Here's some of our brown liner here. Right there. Touch of that red. That's what we wanted to do. So it's kind of that going back and forth. We tone stuff down, brighten it up, find a balance of what it is you really want. Okay. So let's put some of that brown liner back out on the palette. Where are you at? So again, this is from Reaper Miniatures right here. Here, let's throw that right over here. And we're just going to do a similar thing. Now, there's a little less green here because he's got some more clothing on. I don't have actually right with me a reference picture, so that's why we're just going to do some of the opening stages of this. So we're taking some of that initial brown grain just like we did on the other one. We're going to throw it out here. We're going to vary it in places. There it's a little more brown. A little more towards the brown. Now back towards the green. Even throw a little bit of red in here. And you say, wait a minute. You're just blowing away all of that pre-shading that you did with the airbrush there, well, it looks that way. It certainly seems that way. But once we break out the makeup sponges, that is going to change. So you can see sponge, take some of this away, and I think you'll see what's left behind. See there's greens and reds all in there. Here, let's take some more of that away. And there we go. That accentuates the shading that's there. Let's grab one. So these two are basically identical just a second ago. And now we've basically enhanced the shading on this. So I'm going to grab myself a little bit of drink here. And I get to be talking that much after a while. Now let's see what we can. Yeah, let's go back to some of the greens here. We're going to take some of that, the contrast yellow. We'll be adding that to our green. You see I took a little bit of the brown as well to keep that from becoming a little too bright of a green. But you can see I have all this stuff out here on my palette, so I have plenty of action that I can do. There's this whole set of colors. That's why I like to work on multiples at the same time. Now, he's actually got himself a baseball hat on here, that's pretty wild. Now, maybe we can do some chips or whatever on those, on the armor here. Got a bit of looks like a laptop screen there. Oh, what the heck, we're just going to get a little bit of red into some of these pouches, a reddish brown. Here, let's get a little touch of the red into that. Get a little separation here. Now I've got this blue liner over here, and I still got that ultramarine, or that blue liner right there, and the ultramarine blue, light ultramarine blue. We'll just throw a little bit of that onto the sniper rifle here. If you want to do this in metallics, you could take that same blue liner. I'll show you in a second here. Mix it with this, the metal medium, and then you get kind of a blackened steel look. Oh, hey there, Dave. Do you stream on Twitch or just YouTube? Right now, I'm sticking with the YouTube because I normally am recording videos that get uploaded to YouTube. So it's more familiar for me, and it's a little bit easier to control. Well, the other thing too is that I started out, I already had, oh gosh, when I first started doing the videos again, I already had 2,300 subscribers on the YouTube channel. So it just kind of made sense to stay here instead of essentially kind of recreating it on Twitch. So yeah, we'll go back in there in a little bit and we'll hit that computer keyboard. In the meantime, doing some darker shading there. Let's hit this gun stock. Add a little bit there. And this is, again, just that same old craft brush. Here, let's get some more of these pouches going. So what you're seeing now, you're seeing the beginning stages. And now we're working our way towards this. Because this is where we went in and we added all of our shading here. Added our colors. And that's where we're at here. We're going to start to see all the different greens that we pulled out of there. We are going to try and do that on this guy here too. And of course he just has more stuff on him. You can even see that the paint is just mixing on the brush practically. And that's definitely kind of part of the plan. Let's get a few edge lights here. So if you check out some of the other stuff that's on the YouTube channel, there's lots of basing techniques. I really love that. You're going to see lots of oil painting. You're going to see other contrast paint videos too. You'll even see some bolt action battle reports, some Cruel Seas ships being painted. Like I said, plenty of the Song of Ice and Fire stuff or Game of Thrones that's what I always do it as. Now we've also got our lighter color. Now he's not much of a sniper if he's letting too much of this be glinting, so we won't do a whole lot of that. I'll just do a few slight touches of that. We do want to have some reflections in the metal here though. Let's do that. So we're basically getting a little reflected light on the underside over here. A little bit of dark, light, dark. Maybe a touch under here too. And you can always glaze this darker. I could take the wildwood, that's the contrast wildwood, mix it with some of the Leviathan, and then all of a sudden you got yourself a nice, really dark wash. And it's gonna go with this on the bandana here real quick. Nice thing is about this, I can change that color if need be. Doesn't not beholden to it because it's so early in the process. Can always go back in there and change it. I'm going to say that's still some of the actual carapace there. So we're going to say that should be green. I'm going to say that's part of his shoulder. So that's going to be green. I'm going to say that's green. Like you do. But not going to forget that we should have some yellow in here too. So that's, again, the Iandin. Get this into his shoulder. We got the chest, and I'm going to say it looks like he does not have clothing on his chest. I'm going to say not. Let's get ourselves some green out here. So that's, again, the contrast green. Put that right in here. His leg, I'm probably going to do some other secondary glazes on that. Okay. That would definitely be helpful to know if I just knew exactly what I should be doing for, say, why those eyes are in a really different shape. Yeah, working some green here. We got to get some on his hand. So for those just in here, we're using our big old craft brushes, using our homemade wet palette. And yeah, all it was a Chinese food container, chamois sponge, some parchment paper, some water, and you are good to go. I have seen these $30 wet palettes or whatever, and people have them, and it's like they don't clean it out every 2 days or whatever. There's stuff growing in it. I'm thinking that is not convenient, not for that much money. That to me is not the easy button. Or the conservative button. I guess I could do this pack in blue or whatever. But I'm just going to go with the more of a kind of a brownish thing there for some pouches and for some stripes. Back to some of the green here. And some of these colors that I add, they seem light, but they really aren't. They are really just more along the lines of mid-tones, and you can see they're on the watery side too. They're not a glaze, like something that's going to sink down into crevices or whatever. But still, they're not 100% straight up paint, which means that stuff that's underneath will show through. We could even do a little bit of a light there, a little bit of infrared scope light there. Maybe we'll do that in a bit. We just have to let some stuff dry first. Here. So that's where his eyes are going to be. That's still carapace right there. We're going to get some green back into that. There we are. We need some green over here. I don't know. I'm tempted. Let's give him something like maybe a caterpillar hat. Not quite sure if that's in the District 9 lore, but why not? Let's just do some yellow right here. And we'll grab some of that's the blue liner. And all of a sudden now, remember that whole thing of not using black? Well, didn't need black to make black. Remember we talked about having the blue and the brown? Well, that's what we did. Just took the blue, took the brown, and poof, now you got black. And I can start to strengthen some of the darks here on the sniper rifle. Can even do a little bit of a glaze there. Don't feel shy about just taking your finger and wiping some of the paint away sometimes. Here's a little more. The base, I'm going to go the same as we did on here. So it's got a little bit of that reddish touch to it. Looks like a red clay. And it was fairly simple. It was just some rocks, gravel, a little bit of the oxide paste because this base was shaped obviously into one of the gaming piece type things. So I needed to eliminate that. There's some of that light ultramarine blue. We'll mix it. Now it gets to be a little bit more along the lines of gray for some of these rocks, which we'll then go back in there and tone those down. Now, pistol, gonna have to make that darker too. Keyboard here. You can barely see it, so I'm not gonna fuss with that too much. Yeah, you really can't see that too much. But I am going to take some of that, put that on these guys. Here, let's go back into our darker color. That's a little bit of the blue liner. We'll mix it with some of the mahogany, and now this can be much darker because I don't think that's supposed to be a pearl-handled revolver. I'm just going to throw it out there. Since you're painting these from the board game, actually these were what would you want to call it? Some resin masters right here, or yeah, they must have been resin masters because they definitely weren't 3D printed. I don't actually have the board game here. But what I would do is if there's a faction thing, well, you just paint the right here along the bottom of the base. I would think that's actually that should be plenty good enough. I know we've done it on, well, heck, all my Blood Bowl teams. I just paint the team colors along the edge here. I know there was one really insane project where I actually painted different heraldry from the various Swiss cantons. I think that's what those are referred to as. So yeah, it's been taken to several extremes. You can see we're getting again, not really thinking this is black lining. It's just a glaze. Because we're just letting that get down into those crevices there. See, I can take this, use my finger, wipe away that excess. Or build back in some darks in places here. Again, I can do the same thing with my finger, wipe some of that away. Let's go back into some of our greens again, have a little fun with that. So again, that's some of the contrast yellow used in there to make sure that the paint stays a little bit more translucent. Just like we did on this one, this is where we start to pick out some of your highlights and finish off some of your shape there. I think you can see it right here. That's where you get some of that nice translucency. And I always have something else here that I can always take some of that reddish color and tone that down a bit. But let's lighten up the carapace over here. So I got the orange or the yellow here, a little bit of the contrast yellow. We don't want that too light because otherwise it's going to start fighting with the yellow that we've got right over there. That's better. Every so often I might even just grab some of that red. Makes it a little more neutral. There's his eye. I think I'm going to go with his antenna being a little lighter here because of what we did with the hat. And And there's also a chain here, so I'm going to bring out, this is that faded ultramarine right here. I'll throw that back in its place. Here. Let's get some of it on the opposite side of where the bandana's coming out. And then I'm also going to lighten up a few spots here. Something like that. Maybe give it a little bit of texture, like there's some, it's been beat up a little bit. And whenever I think it's too much, I can just tone it down with some of the other stuff that's on the palette. We sometimes refer to that as Pallet Sludge, the miracle color that you always have. You won't leave home without it, because you're always going to have it. So again, that's just another, some kind of pouch there of some kind. Gonna get back in here with some of that, it's almost like a skin tone sort of a color. Get into some of these straps here. Like so. Yeah. And I would imagine the plastic pieces, just like I do with all the other, like Zombicide, Song of Ice and Fire, all the other plastic things, I just hit it with the Stino Res. That's usually, well, I think the only thing we found that Stino Res can't prime on is gummy bears. And I think one of the least likely things you're probably going to be painting is gummy bears, so I think Stino Res will do you just fine. Because you're probably more likely to be eating the gummy bear than to be turning it into a masterpiece. That's not the same for everybody. I mean, you do you. So once again, altered the color of that a little bit with some of my yellow, the same yellow that I used to alter some of my greens. And anytime I feel like, well, that's just too bright or whatever, can always darken it down. What's also fun is, we've got some of that blue liner. We throw some of that into our mixer. It starts to almost turn that a little bit gray. Just grays it down. There's another strap that we had forgotten about. Sorta, kinda. So this, I don't know, let's do it a different color green here. Let's just make that a dark green. Get a little variation from the rest of him. Like that. And this is some of our original glazing color that we started out with. Unless you have another cleaning sludge up. Man, you can't, geez. You can't clean up the sludge. Gotta leave the sludge out there. could, if it were a game, it would be Sledgehammer. And by Pallet Sludge, it's not necessarily some dead color or just mud. It's just, okay, you've got some of the contrast green mixed with a little bit of the blue line and mixed with a little bit of the mahogany, and you got yourself a nice dark gray. But depending on just how much of one or the other of those you have in there, you might get a gray that's got a little more blue to it, more red to it, more green. And yes, gray can be all of those things. You can make gray, you can mix purple and green together and make a really nifty gray. I've done a whole bunch of videos that show that. So let's get ourselves just a little insignia there. Alright, what do we got? I think you can see that. So we'll throw that down, and now we can modify it a little bit. Here, let's get that yellow right there. So obviously, I mean, for me, it's a big disadvantage not familiar with the sculpts at all. And that is why when I'm doing all those army painting series, that is why there's always some kind of a color test figure. It does a couple of things. First of all, it just doesn't set in motion your color scheme, but it's also the all-important moment where you figure out, okay, how long is this going to take? Because I don't know how many unpainted armies have been, or partially painted armies have been bequeathed to me because somebody had a grand vision for some big old project. Thinking, I'm going to do this, freehand this, source lighting that, and then they realize, oh, yeah, well, I actually have to paint all this stuff. And then they realize, well, gee, that's going to take 3 hours per figure, and yeah, there's 33 to 40 of them, or 50 or 60 in this army. What the heck am I going to do? I've seen that all the time. Best way to avoid that, you do that color test figure, basically. And now you say, well, okay, what if I do just a little bit of freehand on every figure? Well, if it took 15 minutes on the test figure, you can do some simple multiplication of 30 times 15, and you say, whoops, that's too many 15s. I'm not going to do that. It's not worth it. Maybe you just isolate that for some kind of special figures, a character figure, sergeant, whatever, champion. We've definitely done that on some of the army painting series where, well, it would have been nice to do this on every figure, but nope, there's not enough time to do it all. And that's pretty much true for just about everybody. There's just not enough time for all the things you'd want to do. It's time management, resource management. How do you get the nicest looking basing with maybe the least amount of effort? Sometimes they don't always go together hand in hand. Just like with this, I don't know exactly how many potential miniatures of this you'd have to do. But even now, okay, now we've stopped to do other things, but we're an hour and 40 minutes into this, and we're working on two guys. Now, granted, you're doing this, you probably aren't going to be doing it to this level of elaborate nature, but still, let's say it's a half an hour a figure or whatever, and that's all you do. If there's 40 of them to paint or 50 or whatever, you've got yourself a project now. And is that a project that you are comfortable spending a whole bunch of your time working on? Like you can see, we're just taking slowly, little by little, eking our way through this, figuring out what gets to be lighter, what doesn't. I need some of my yellow out here. Again, this is the Pro Acryl yellow. Let's reinforce a few more things here on the hat. Kind of get some separation there. A little there. And now this is where we're going to go back into our contrast paint green. We'll mix it with a little bit of the yellow there. That becomes a much brighter green. Now, thanks for stopping in, Bethany. Much appreciated. I'm just glad you were able to make this one because I figured, oh man, there is just no way she's going to be able to get in here. So that was really cool. Thanks for stopping by. So just a quick little review. My normal time when I'm doing this, just for a variety of reasons. I usually start this, and this is Central Time US, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning. It's a couple of things that less likely to be having phones ring or whatever. I'm also usually either exercising or trying to kind of recover from just the regular day, the daytime, and then trying to get things ready for nighttime when there'll be no calls, no nothing, except from people from overseas. And I usually will keep going till 4, 5-ish in the morning, Central Time. But that tends to be breakfast in Europe and supper in Australia, hence all of the... Oh, hey, Mike. Thanks, Mike, for stopping by. Yeah, I told him how you were painting basically almost an entire figure going craft brush. And yeah, I think what I'll do is I want to get to do the old bark and branch basing on a live session at some point. I haven't really done the basing on a live session yet because, well, it tends to really mess up this area a lot. And the other machine is not really set up for the whole streaming thing. It's just set up for strictly recording videos as we add some darks in here. I'm just going to go glazing here. Kind of like fishing, but for some shadows. There we are. See? Just a couple of quick little glazes and all of a sudden, bang, there is shape again. We're going to do that along here too. And then we'll add in some lights back into that. But even this guy here, he's starting to take himself some shape. Let's see if we can't get some more red on this. Again, this is the Pro Acryl Transparent Red. Could have done this in blue, I suppose. And if I get some, if I find I check back and I say, oop, I did have a concept art piece and I got to change that to blue. To me, it is not a big deal. But you notice what we're using to make that lighter, not white. You use white, well, first of all, it's going to turn pink. Second of all, it's going to be chalky. And I'm fairly certain neither of those are results you're looking for. That is definitely something I hear a lot. People saying, man, oh man, I'm trying to highlight this red or lighten this red. It's just weird, chalky pink. Well, that's because white gets in there. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a really bright yellow, so bright that it turns it orange either. I have actually used, oh gosh, what was the old GW color? I think it was called Rotting Flesh or something like that. Sorry about that. It was almost like a yellowish green, but it was far enough away from green that it didn't turn things brown. Yet, still lightened it up. Okay. Now we're gonna take a touch of yellow there. Do a little hint of some yellow object source lighting on that. Let's get back to his head over here. Once again, trying to make sure we have some differences with his hat, which I'm going to say means going more towards the white and the green together, like you do. Now this is dried well enough that we can start to add some contrast down into here too. And I still have some of my original green, so I don't want it to all be the same color green. Just like before, I also see there's part of his leg here that needs to be painted. You've got some, I don't know if they're little spikes or whatever, spine type things there. We'll just hit a few of those. Get his shoulder. Now that we've got our dark glazes in here, we can go back in like this. Get a little couple of highlights on his feet here. Now, all of this, when I get things to this point, I say, look, the rest, you do whatever you want to do. If you want to spend 5 more hours on something like this, go ahead. What's the big deal? You do whatever it is you wanted to do. If this is it, then this is it. Or, and I mention this all the time during those army painting tutorials that I do on the Patreon page there. What's to say you take it off of this thing? I mean, it's just blue tack. I take it off of this. I use it for a game. And then I come back and I do some more painting on it. There's nothing that says you can't do that. So this is going to be, we're just adding a little bit of a lighter gray to that, to the bill of the hat. We need a little bit of shading there. That's a little bit of that, I keep wanting to call it French ultramarine blue, but it is faded ultramarine blue. So see, now the hat starts to get a little bit of light and dark going on there. Where are we at for you? Gonna try and get ever so slightly a little highlight on the bill of that hat. Here, let's get ourselves just a touch of reflected light on these guys. Yeah, oh, that needs to be green. I just noticed that. All in here. There is definitely, I really like this, some kind of spiny ridge type thing in there. Definitely want to get that. And we're actually even now going to take some of our red there. Once again, this is just to keep it off of just straight up green, because again, that would just be so boring. Now we need some darks in here. Hopefully the palette hasn't slid off of its moorings. But we did the darks on the other side. We need the darks on that side. I'm also going to take here some of the snake bite leather right there. Again, the contrast paint. We'll get this on some parts of the ground here. Maybe even hit some of these pouches here. So yeah, the contrast paint doesn't have to be about the whole slopping it on thing. I realize that's what people were kind of told they should do with it or whatever, but you can do other things with it besides that. And the side benefit is they tend not to be as costly things. Tends to make it last a whole bunch longer. Look at that. We can even go over some parts of that chain. Let's get into that here, but see, we can give it a little more shading in there. So we're using contrast paint, but it's very, very controlled. It doesn't have to be a slap it everywhere sort of thing. Yeah, I know. I spend most of my time just kind of spending that telling people, don't do the rules, don't follow the rules. Oh, hey Tyler, how's it going? Yeah, this is a very, very, very early start for me, but we wanted to get these. It's not a bad time necessarily for folks overseas too, especially in Australia. It's in the morning, maybe a little tougher for our European comrades here. So I apologize for that. But I have more, so I can do other streams at a better time. Hey Gary. Well, and speaking of our friends in the Pacific, yeah, that's the shipping now has just gotten so crazy. Like I'm gonna have to probably use DHL for shipping everything overseas because the post office has basically stopped doing that. Not making life terribly easy for me. But here would again taking that ultramarine blue, starting to work in some lights. Now, what have we not brought in? Let's bring in some of the what the heck? Here's some of that titanium white. And I'm going to compare what we've got here next to our first one. I believe this the CJ here. So that's where we were. This is our first one that we painted all the way through, and you can see he is starting to approach our sniper guy, starting to approach that. And both of those at 8 o'clock looked exactly like this guy. Just after lunch. Yeah, it's making me thirsty. I'm going to have to grab me another sip of water here in a second. Sorry about that. A little headphone thing going on. Now we're adding a little bit of our touch of that titanium white. Once again, the same thing as before on the sniper rifle here. It's really shouldn't have lots of glinting metal on it. That would be, well, not the greatest camouflage for a sniper. And I'm gonna get me some of these here. Got some these straps to hit. I'm gonna grab some of this. This is the mahogany right here. Not too many Garys. Yeah, what was that? The T-shirt worthy phrase? There can never be too many Garys. I believe that's what it was. Let's hit these like so. Nothing fancy. And then we've got to get some green in here too, over some parts of the arm. I hope you can see that. It's going to be tough. There are just times, the nature of the beast, where it'll be much tougher for you to see, given a certain angle that I might have to hold this thing at. Happens pretty much in every single demo that I do. Now here is the handle of our pistol here. Let's get this a little lighter. So that's the thing. Yeah, too many gear. Well, didn't we have 3? I'm pretty sure we had a record of 3 simultaneous Garys on a stream. Geez, is that going to have to become a thing where we try and recruit more Garys to just be on the stream? So it's just all Garys all the time. But there's certain, well, we call them T-shirt worthy phrases. What are some of them? Oh yeah, if a color goes somewhere, it must go everywhere. I think the other one was, you can't take the voyage of discovery if you never get on the boat. And the whole idea of that was just, I tend to do a whole lot of experimenting with stuff. And by whole lot, I mean all the time, pretty much. It's just a constant state of experiment. You know what? I'm going to say that those might even be wires. So let's do one with white. Let me see if I can find me a blue real quick here. Oh, what the heck. We'll just create a turquoise one here. That's the Achillean green. Just going to throw a bit of that over here. I'll mix some of this with it. I'm going to move that out of the way. Find a little drier area here. Do that wire. Bang. Oh, yeah. Speaking of which, I wanted some of this over here for his blue jeans, or jorts, or whatever they are. Yeah. Because we have plenty of the other sort of grayish blue. What we didn't have was this kind of blue. Don't go wild with it. And just put enough in there to get you the general gist. And that's that. Now we'll go back over here. And I might use some of that on the scope there. Touch of that on the barrel. Ever so slightly. Basically trying to get a little bit of sky color into that. Here, let's get ourselves a little bit of a gray. Here, I don't think you can see. Well, I suppose you can. I'm just messing with some of the keys here on this keyboard. because I'm just assuming that's what it is. And I'm going with a more, well, say modern keyboard color where it's the dark, not going with the 1990s white or what would you call it? Almost like a cream color or whatever. Oh, what the heck? We're just going to grab a little bit of this Blood Angels red here. Throw it out there. I'm going to throw a little bit of red over that. And that's that. I'm going to use a touch of that here on his bandana. As you do. So that toned that down, knocked that diode down a little bit, and then we can sort of bring it back. I could use fluorescent paint on this. I've certainly done that often enough. I'll show you just a very recent thing that we did the fluorescent paints on. So this is actually, it's my current army painting series. So that is this. So there's lots of fluorescent paint there. You can see it gives it that nice, real intense glow, not just on the greens, but also the oranges there on the base. But here we'll just go straight up regular paints. We won't go fluorescent this time. So see, now we have a little bit of object source lighting on that. Now, does the winning Gary gain the fallen Gary's powers? There can be only one Gary. Oh my goodness. Well, it depends. What now? Do they have to use a craft brush as a weapon? So obviously, whoever has the superior craft brush could win that contest. Now I'm just going to find myself a few highlights in places here. Just because I'm not quite sure what everything is on here, so I'm just, in some ways, just kind of feeling my way through. Now the next one of these that I do, there's a few options that I might be doing. Where the heck? Ah, here he is. So this might be one of the next things I do. This is from Creature Caster here. This might be my next live stream, and that would just be, oh, what's today? Tuesday? Maybe it'd be a Thursday or something. Either be a Thursday or Friday. Ideally, I'd do this many more days out of the week, but at certain times of the month, there's just so many more commission things or Patreon videos and everything else, and stuff to ship out, that I can't always be doing the live sessions. Like I said, if I could, I'd do them every single night because they're really fun for me. It's way more fun for me to paint with you guys than it is just by myself. And hopefully you guys can pick up something too. It's obviously not as formal as the regular videos that I do. And like I say, you can check out some of those. There's other formal videos on the YouTube channel also. And yes, there's also battle reports, so I'm going to be getting back into some bolt action ones soon here. And as soon as I have the rest of the Easterlings painted and the Rohan and some more of the Army of the Dead, we'll be doing Lord of the Rings battle reports. we'll be doing terrain videos. I don't have any terrain videos right now, but I have plenty of blog post terrain, so you can check that out there. I see we need to get back into our greens. Oh yeah, we definitely want to get a few lights in here. So we're going to take some of that yellow into there. Like you do. Get his feet working in here. Now, I got this. Some of this is the original dark. This is the very first stuff we put down way back at 8 o'clock on the CJ figure, or as I nicknamed it, Mama Prawn, or Mommy Prawn, I think. Let's go. Let's see what. That's a nifty gray-green right there. Let's see what that will do. It's not necessarily a highlight. Yeah, it's nice and gray. Yeah, he's, what would you say, 50, it's about a 50 millimeter round base. And he's got a gun, not a gun, he's got the mace that he's holding in his hand, and then we've got this kind of right here. And the idea is to make it look like that. And that's, we're going to see some more fluorescent paint on that. So that is that big cloud of smoke there. We're doing that. That should be pretty fun, I think. Here's some more of this kind of a grayish green as a highlight color here. A little more. We got some. Let's get this, some lighting under here. So we already have conveniently a greenish gray. I'll just throw that on the underside here. Use the hand to knock some of it away. Let us go another step later on a few green highlights. Like that. So definitely, if you want to get the notifications on these, learn from me and say, yeah, I need to hit the all notifications, because otherwise you may only just get an alert that says, oh, somebody posted a video. Or sometimes not at all. That's the weird thing. And then there's other times I get notifications like crazy. I don't know, it seems random and hit or miss when I'm getting my notifications from other people. Alright. I want to get his other eye that's right over there. His face is definitely a bit different from the other prawn. I'm going to go with the little touch of the blue liner here. Not too much. Got to darken that down. That's better. Gonna use that same little blue to get some other little bit of shading in places here. Oh, that's a variable. That's a yeah, that's why does it have to? Well, there's gonna have to be different like Gary verbs then too. Are the Garys gonna have to be? Will they have to be numbered? Will they get Roman numerals? Or what was that? It was a Doctor Who or something like that. There was like Proper Dave and Other Dave or something like that. Now those are titles worth fighting for. Now I'm going to just don't want to go too light with some green highlights on the pouches here, but I want a little something. Can't rival what's going on with the carapace there green wise. Yeah, the legendary thing that always happens when you're painting any kind of army, whatever project you're doing, you always know exactly how you should paint everything when you're painting the last miniature. That is just how that goes. By the time you get to the last one, you're now familiar with everything you got to do, and then the project's over. Because that's just how it goes. It's happened to me when I'm doing the army painting series. All of a sudden, the series ends, and I'm starting a new one, and it just feels like, well, wait a minute, why are these so unfamiliar? Because you get kind of used to seeing the same ones. Now, I'm just gonna... I'm not quite sure if those are supposed to be shell casings or cans. But I'm just gonna get a little more... slightly more shading on those. I guess they could potentially be some, maybe, beer cans. It's possible. I mean, if they're beer cans, let's see if we can't make ourselves some labels here. Just a quick little something. Something on a label there. Maybe a little bit of a sort of an aluminum can shine on that. Then just get a little bit of an edge on this guy here. Let's see what kind of darks we can find here. Where's my brown liner? There it is. Put you back out there. So this will be... I got my craft brush ready, on guard. That's that could be the newest Xbox sensation right there. Gary versus Gary. Well, we had at one point thought about calling the... Well, it was going to be... When I was thinking about doing the Twitch thing, I think it was going to be called something like First Person Painter or whatever. And it was going to have sort of a... I don't know, sort of a video game type of thing. Because the idea is that you see what I see. That's why I set up the camera this way. This is about as close to being in front of me as I could get the camera. Let's see, prawns eat cat food or dog food. Well, either way, that could look a little bit like Purina. Or Meow Mix. One or the other. So I'm just adding in whatever these little dots where I saw them sculpted in there. And what I'm going to do here is just I'll definitely say thanks to everybody that was on. Bethany, Trevor, Mike, first, last. All the Garys. So many Garys. And like I said, if you want to get the notifications for these wild and crazy nights, then you can do the subscribe and what's that? Turn off all notifications. Hit that bell. And then you can get into the magical world of insanity, which is this. And I got the blog that's scrolling across the bottom of the screen there. So that's going to be the wappeliusblogspot.com. Oh, there are thousands of tutorials there. And by thousands, I mean 5,300, something like that. Because you're talking about 12 years of pretty much daily blog posts on there. Or 9 years, something like that. I've lost track. Too many years. Looking for a couple of more highlights. The green along there. Here, let's get ourselves also, we gotta do some sort of a little bit of a edge highlight on some of these straps. You gotta separate them somehow. Sometimes if I don't say anything, that's me just kind of hold my breath, actually. You do the hold your breath, slow down your heartbeat, kind of like the sniper thing. You're just sniping with paint. Have you painted any of the Star Wars Legion minis? I have not. I think I've got one of them, Adam. The movie takes place in South Africa. No, well, I'm sure. Well, they have a whole. There's like a whole book that comes with the game that has all kinds of movie stills in it and stuff. Because it's done by the Weta folks, so. And I just saw it very briefly at Gen Con. It was just sort of flashed in front of me. Had about 2 seconds to look at it before the vendors hall opened. I had to get back to my position at the Badger Airbrush booth. Okay, let's go back to this. See, that's the original dark wash that I had, or a glaze, but now it's actually becoming a highlight color. This is what I mean. You can see that there's some red in there because as I mix the lighter color with it, even though it's green, see it's almost turning gray. And there's there a couple of options for the bell note. I had to switch mine to all. It says personal wasn't telling me. See, I think I got to go back and do the bell thing on a bunch of my subscriptions too. Now, of course, some of they're my historical guys, and so many of their videos are getting demonetized. And not just demonetized, they're also taking away the recommendations. So I really need to do the hit the subscriber thing, because otherwise I'll never know that they did a new video. So we're doing that same on here. The little bit of reflected light ever so slightly. Okay, let's grab our first one here. So this is just a little over 2 hours now, and we've got both of these guys pretty well out of the way. That is, again, thanks to everybody that showed up here. I will have to be breaking away now. But this is a typical live session. Now, of course, the last one I did had that big old car. The other one was the Necron Destroyer, right? So you never quite know what you're going to get. I try to vary what it is that I'm doing, the subject matter. I try to vary the technique, the material. Sometimes it's oils. Sometimes it's metallic. Sometimes it's non-metallic. So thanks again, everybody, and I will catch you on the next episode.